The reluctant diplomat. The diplomatic shuttle broke through Vantera's dense atmosphere, crystalline buildings of the capital city, Saharia, glinting like razor shards against the violet sky. Maya Chen gripped her armrest tighter, both from the turbulence and the gnawing anxiety that had been her constant companion since accepting this assignment. "First time on Vantara?" asked Ambassador Krell, the seasoned diplomat who headed their delegation. His weathered face bore the subtle lattice of rejuvenation treatments that had kept him in service for over 70 years. "First time anywhere beyond the Sol system," Maya admitted, brushing a strand of black hair from her face. At 32, she was the youngest member of the diplomatic corps ever sent on a mission of this importance. "The briefings didn't prepare me for this." Below them, the alien landscape unfolded. Vast geometric gardens surrounding a city that seemed to grow from the planet itself rather than being built upon it. The Vantarans had mastered bioarchitecture centuries before humans had even achieved spaceflight. "No briefing ever does," Krell chuckled. "That's why we bring specialists like you. Your dissertations on comparative cultural evolution caught the attention of people far above my pay grade." Maya nodded, though she suspected her selection had more to do with desperation than her academic achievements. The Vantaran civil unrest had escalated rapidly, and Earth's diplomatic service had scrambled to assemble a team. A year ago, she'd been teaching at the University of New Singapore. Now she was about to help negotiate a peace that could determine humanity's standing among the galactic concord for generations. The shuttle settled on a landing platform extending from the Royal Spire, the tallest structure in Saharia. A delegation of Vantarans waited, tall, slender beings with iridescent skin ranging from deep azure to pale lavender. Their four-fingered hands were clasped in the formal greeting posture, elaborate ceremonial garments flowing around their bodies like liquid metal. "Remember," Krell murmured as the hatch depressurized, "make no sudden movements. Direct eye contact only with those who initiate it first. And whatever you do, don't refuse any offering of food or drink." "That wasn't in the protocol brief," Maya whispered. "It's not protocol. It's survival. We need them to see us as equals, not squeamish aliens." The air that rushed in carried scents of unfamiliar spices and the ozone tang that permeated Vantaran cities. Maya followed the ambassador, consciously controlling her breathing, to adjust to the slightly higher oxygen content. A Vantaran stepped forward, skin shimmering midnight blue in the fading daylight. Standing nearly 2 meters tall, he towered over most of the human delegation. "I am Lord Protector Sarvak," he announced, voice resonating with a musical quality that the translation implants couldn't fully capture. "On behalf of the 7th Sovereign Council, I welcome the representatives of Earth." Krell performed the formal response, a complicated sequence of gestures that had taken Maya weeks to memorize, but which he executed flawlessly. The ceremony complete, they were escorted into the Royal Spire. The interior was even more impressive than the external view. Corridors curved in mathematically perfect arcs, walls embedded with bioluminescent organisms that responded to movement with subtle shifts in color. Maya's analytical mind catalogued every detail, every interaction between the Vantarans themselves, the subtle hierarchies expressed through positioning, the micro-expressions that her human colleagues missed. They were led to a vast chamber where dozens of Vantarans had assembled, divided visibly into 2 groups. The tension in the room was palpable even across species barriers. "The progressive faction," Krell whispered, nodding toward the group with more elaborate attire, "and the traditionalists." The second group wore simpler garments with ancient symbolic patterns. At the chamber's center stood a raised dais where 3 Vantarans sat on crystalline thrones. In the middle was an elderly Vantaran whose pale blue skin had faded to almost white with age. The crowned sovereign Thelak, Maya recognized from briefings. To his right sat a younger female with striking violet skin, Princess Zora, heir to the sovereignty. And to the left was a robust male with deep cobalt coloration, High General Krovak, the military leader whose loyalties were reportedly divided. Ambassador Krell stepped forward to deliver Earth's formal address. Maya watched the gathered Vanterans, noting how the traditionalists seemed to focus their attention not on Krell, but on the High General. Something felt wrong, a tension beyond what they'd been briefed to expect. As Krell spoke of peace and mutual prosperity, Maya noticed a subtle movement among the traditionalist faction. A Vanteran guard shifted position, hand moving to the ceremonial blade at his waist. The movement was so slight that none of her colleagues appeared to notice. Maya's heart rate spiked. The positioning wasn't random. It gave the guard a clear line to the ambassador. Years of mandatory combat training for all diplomatic personnel flashed through her mind. Time seemed to slow. Ambassador. Maya lunged forward, tackling Krell just as the guard drew his weapon. Not the ceremonial blade, but a compact energy projector that had been disguised as its hilt. The chamber erupted in chaos. Energy beams crisscrossed the air. The human security detail returned fire, but they were outnumbered. Maya dragged the ambassador behind a column, her ears ringing from proximity to an energy discharge. "We need to reach the shuttle," Krell gasped, blood seeping from a wound in his shoulder. Across the chamber, Maya saw Princess Zora being rushed away by loyal guards, while the crowned sovereign collapsed on his throne, a bloom of dark blue spreading across his ceremonial robes. The High General was nowhere to be seen. "It's a coup," Maya realized aloud. "They're eliminating the progressive leadership and us along with them." A Vanteran in Royal Guard armor appeared beside them, making Maya flinch until she recognized the violet insignia of Princess Zora's personal guard. "This way," the guard urged in accented standard. "The princess commands me to secure the Earth delegation." "There are more of us," Maya said, supporting Krell's weight. "They are already lost." The guard replied grimly. "You too must come now." Maya glanced back at the chamber. Bodies, both human and Vanteran, lay scattered across the ornate floor. The guard was right. Their colleagues were beyond help. They followed the guard through a concealed passage behind the throne room, the sounds of fighting fading behind them. The narrow corridor sloped downward, leading deep into the foundations of the royal spire. "Where are you taking us?" Krell demanded, his voice weakening. "To the sanctuary of ancestors," the guard replied. "By ancient law, it is neutral ground. You will be safe there until we can arrange evacuation." They emerged into a vast underground chamber, walls covered in intricate carvings that seemed to predate Vanteran modern civilization. Princess Zora stood at its center, surrounded by a small contingent of loyal guards. Her royal attire was torn and stained with blue blood, not her own, Maya noted with relief. "Ambassador, Specialist Chen." The princess acknowledged them, her posture rigid with controlled emotion. "I grieve that your diplomatic mission has been met with such treachery." "Your Highness," Krell began formally, but a coughing fit interrupted him. The energy weapon had done more damage than was immediately apparent. "He needs medical attention," Maya said, easing the ambassador onto a stone bench. "Our physician approaches," Princess Zora assured her, then turned to address her guards. "Secure the outer passages. Let none enter save those bearing my seal." As the guards dispersed, Maya helped the Vanteran physician attend to Krell. The ambassador's condition stabilized, but he remained unconscious after treatment. "Will he recover?" Maya asked the physician. "The weapon was designed to kill Vanterans," the physician replied. "Your biology is different. He lives, but I cannot say when he will wake." Maya found herself suddenly, terrifyingly aware that she was now the senior diplomatic representative of Earth on a planet descending into civil war. She turned to Princess Zora, who stood before a wall carving depicting what appeared to be an ancient combat ritual. "Your Highness, what happens now?" The princess's gaze remained fixed on the carving. "General Krovak has sided with the traditionalists. My father is dead. By morning, they will declare me unfit to rule and install Krovak as emergency sovereign. Can your loyalists counter this coup in conventional battle?" "No, our forces are outnumbered." Zara traced the carved figure in the center of the relief, a warrior holding a simple spear. But there is another way, one the traditionalists cannot ignore without losing all legitimacy. Maya studied the carving more carefully. It depicted two figures facing each other in combat, surrounded by observers. Trial by combat. The challenge of succession, Zara corrected. Established in our deepest antiquity, and enshrined in law that even Krovek's faction must honor. Any claimant to this sovereignty may be challenged, or may select a champion to face the challenger. And Krovek will challenge you. He already has, through his proxy, Commander Varric, the finest warrior in our military. I have 3 days to accept or forfeit the throne. 3 days isn't much time to prepare, Maya observed. It is not, Zora agreed, turning finally to face Maya directly. Which is why I must ask something unprecedented of Earth. I need a champion, Specialist Chen. Maya's brow furrowed. Surely one of your loyal guards would be recognized and eliminated before the challenge. The traditionalists control the city now. But you, Zora's multifaceted eyes studied Maya intently. You they would not suspect until it was too late to object. Me? Maya's voice rose in disbelief. Your Highness, I'm a cultural specialist, not a warrior. All Earth diplomats receive combat training. I have observed this, and our ancient laws make no specification of species for champions. There is precedent from our early contact with the Goral species before their extinction. Maya shook her head. This is insanity. I'm not qualified to. Without this, both our peoples lose. Zara cut in sharply. Krovek's faction seeks to withdraw Vantara from the Galactic Concord. They believe outsider influence weakens us. If they succeed, the trade agreements that your planet depends upon will be nullified. The medicinal compounds that only we can synthesize will no longer reach Earth's hospitals. Maya felt the weight of the princess's words. Millions on Earth relied on Vantaran pharmaceuticals for treatments of conditions that human science still couldn't cure. I would not ask if there were any alternative, Zara continued, her voice softening. But my champion must be someone Krovak does not control, someone whose loyalty he cannot question because it lies elsewhere entirely. The combat. Is it to the death? Maya asked, already knowing the answer. It can end with submission, Zara replied carefully. But Varric has never accepted submission in any challenge. Maya closed her eyes, mind racing. She thought of Ambassador Krell, of her colleagues who had died in the throne room. She thought of the hospitals on Earth where Vantaran medicines kept suffering at bay. When she opened her eyes, Princess Zora was holding out an ancient-looking medallion, its surface etched with symbols similar to those on the wall carvings. This is the champion's mark. Once accepted, you will have the protection of ancient law until the challenge is complete. Even Krovak would not dare violate that tradition. Maya stared at the medallion, aware that she stood at a pivot point in history. Everything in her training had prepared her to observe, analyze, and advise, not to act as the determining factor in an alien succession crisis. If I do this, she said slowly, what guarantee do I have that you'll honor Earth's interests if you regain power? None that words can provide, Zara answered honestly. But consider that I stand here, offering a path that maintains the connection between our worlds, while my opponent would sever it completely. Maya hesitated a moment longer, then took the medallion. It felt impossibly heavy in her palm. I need to know everything about this challenge. The rules, the weapons, the arena, and I need to know about Commander Varric. Princess Zora's expression showed the first hint of hope since they'd entered the sanctuary. You will have all the knowledge we possess, but we must begin immediately. 3 days is indeed not much time. As Vantaran attendants hurried to gather the ancient texts and training implements, Maya cast a glance at the unconscious ambassador. She had just committed Earth to a course of action no diplomatic protocol had ever contemplated. If she survived, she might face censure or worse from her own government. But watching Princess Zora issue commands with renewed authority, Maya understood that sometimes diplomacy required more than words. Sometimes it demanded action, commitment, risk. She closed her fingers around the champion's mark, feeling its edges press into her palm. 3 days to prepare for combat against an alien warrior who had never known defeat. 3 days to master techniques it had taken Vantaran's lifetimes to perfect. "Let's begin," she said. The challenge of blades. Dawn broke over Saharia, casting long shadows through the narrow window slits of the sanctuary of ancestors. Maya's muscles protested as she moved through the sequence of defensive positions for the 12th time that morning. 2 days had passed since she'd accepted Princess Zora's champion medallion. 2 days of intensive training that pushed the limits of human endurance. "Again," instructed Lizara, a female Vantaran warrior who had once served as the princess's combat tutor. "Your stance is still too rigid. The spear must feel like an extension of your arm, not a separate object." Maya readjusted her grip on the practice spear, a simple wooden shaft polished smooth by generations of hands. It was lighter than earth weapons, designed for the naturally more slender Vantaran physiology, which gave her a slight advantage in maneuverability but required precise control. "Commander Varric will expect a Vantaran approach," Lizara continued, circling Maya with critical eyes. "Your advantage lies in movement patterns he cannot anticipate." Maya completed the sequence again, incorporating the fluid transitions that characterized Vantaran combat forms, while adding subtle variations drawn from Earth martial arts. The hybrid style was awkward but unpredictable, perhaps her only real chance against an opponent with superior strength and experience. "Better," Lizara conceded, though her expression remained concerned. "Rest now. The princess approaches." Princess Zora entered the training chamber accompanied by a male Vantaran, whose elaborate facial markings identified him as a scholar of significant rank. In her hands, the princess carried an ancient-looking scroll case. "Specialist Chen," Zara greeted formally, though over the past 2 days a cautious camaraderie had developed between them. "This is Archfist Kelter. He has uncovered information that may prove valuable to your preparation." Maya set aside the practice spear and bowed slightly to the archivist. Although her body ached from the relentless training, her mind remained sharp, hungry for any advantage she could gain. "The challenge of succession has not been invoked for 7 generations," Kelter began, his voice carrying the slightly reverberated quality of older Vantarans. "But I have located the complete ceremonial protocols, as well as historical accounts of past challenges." He unrolled the scroll on a stone table, revealing text in the ancient Vantaran script alongside diagrams of the ritual combat arena. "The arena is circular," the archivist explained, 30 paces in diameter, surrounded by tiered seating for witnesses. "No spectator may interfere once combat begins. The only weapons permitted are the ceremonial spears, crafted from the heartwood of the sacred Ori tree." Maya studied the diagrams. "What constitutes victory? Death, submission, or expulsion from the arena boundaries?" Kelter replied. "In historical challenges, submission was the most common outcome. But not with Varric," Princess Zora added grimly. "In his 17 ritual combats, all have ended in death." Maya absorbed this information with a growing knot in her stomach. "Tell me about him. Everything you know." Lizara stepped forward. "I served alongside him before he pledged to General Krovek. Varric stands taller than most Vantarans, with exceptional reach. His combat style favors overwhelming force rather than technique, but do not mistake this for lack of skill. He has mastered every traditional form and developed several of his own." "Weaknesses?" "Pride," Zora suggested. "He considers himself undefeatable and grows frustrated when combat extends beyond his expectations." "Physically," Lizara continued, "his left side suffered injury during the border conflicts. He compensates well, but under sufficient pressure, the old wound troubles him." Maya nodded, committing every detail to memory. As a diplomatic specialist in cultural evolution, she had been trained to identify patterns, to understand the underlying logic of different societies. Now she applied that same analytical approach to the challenge ahead, searching for any advantage her human perspective might offer. "There is one other matter," the archivist said hesitantly, looking to Princess Zora for permission to continue. When she nodded, he turned back to Maya. "The ancient texts make reference to champions from beyond Vantara, though such cases are exceedingly rare. The last recorded instance occurred 8 centuries ago." "How is this relevant?" Maya asked. "The laws governing the challenge specify that non-Vantaran champions must be announced publicly before the High Council prior to combat. It complicates matters." Princess Zora's expression darkened. "Krovek's faction controls the council chamber. If we reveal your identity too soon, they may find a way to disqualify you or worse. So we need to announce my championship at the last possible moment that still satisfies the law," Maya concluded. "Precisely," the archivist confirmed. "The ceremony begins with invocation prayers, followed by the formal challenge statement. The declaration of champions occurs immediately after, before combat commences. That will be our moment." Ambassador Krell chose that moment to enter the chamber, moving slowly but steadily. His recovery had been remarkable over the past 2 days, though he still wore bandages beneath his diplomatic uniform. "Chen," he acknowledged with a nod that carried both respect and concern. "I've been reviewing your unorthodox diplomatic solution." Maya straightened. "Sir, I know this goes beyond protocol." Krell raised a hand to silence her. "Protocol went out the airlock when they opened fire in the throne room. I've managed to establish brief encrypted contact with Earth Command. They're sending a response vessel, but it won't arrive for at least 7 days. Too late to prevent the challenge," Princess Zora observed. "Exactly." Krell turned to Maya. "Which means you're officially operating under emergency diplomatic authority. When you survive this, I'll ensure the record reflects that you acted under my direct orders." The gesture wasn't lost on Maya. Krell was offering her protection from potential career or legal consequences regardless of the outcome. "Thank you, Ambassador." "Don't thank me yet." Krell's expression was grim. "I've served in a dozen systems, and I've never asked a member of my team to risk their life this way. If there were any alternative." "There isn't," Maya said with more confidence than she felt. "We've explored every option." A Vantaran guard entered and bowed to Princess Zora. "Your Highness, General Krovek's emissaries request audience. They bear formal notice of tomorrow's challenge." Zora exchanged glances with her advisors before nodding. "Bring them to the central chamber. We will meet them there." Maya followed the royal procession through the ancient corridors of the sanctuary. Despite her exhaustion, she walked tall, conscious of the eyes that followed her, both the curious gazes of Zora's loyal retainers and the nervous glances from the remaining human delegation members who had taken refuge in the sanctuary. The central chamber was a vast circular space, its domed ceiling adorned with celestial patterns that Maya recognized as an ancient star map of the Vantaran system. At its center stood a circular platform that bore striking resemblance to the combat arena depicted in the archivist's scrolls. 5 Vantarans in military regalia waited there, their posture rigid with formality. Maya recognized the insignia of General Krovek's elite guard, and at their center stood a towering figure whose cobalt skin bore the distinctive scarification patterns of a war veteran. Commander Varric, she realized, studying his movements as he stepped forward to address Princess Zora. By authority of acting Sovereign Krovek, Varric announced, his resonant voice filling the chamber, "I come to confirm the challenge of succession. Tomorrow at High Zenith, in the arena of ancestors, the succession shall be determined according to ancient law." His gaze swept the assembled group, lingering briefly on Maya and Ambassador Krell before returning to Princess Zora. A flicker of disdain crossed his features. "I stand as champion for the true succession," he continued. "Will you face the challenge yourself, Princess, or do you name a champion?" Princess Zora stepped forward, her slender form somehow imposing in its dignity. "I recognize the challenge and will answer it as law demands. My champion shall be revealed at the appointed time, as is my right by tradition. Varric's eyes narrowed slightly, but he inclined his head in acknowledgement. Then there remains only the matter of terms. What does the princess seek should her champion prevail? Restoration of the Progressive Council, amnesty for loyalty to the Crown, and recognition of the established treaties with Earth and the Galactic Concord, Zora replied without hesitation. And should I prevail? Varric asked, a dangerous smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Your master receives the sovereignty without further challenge from my bloodline, Zora conceded, but the Earth delegation departs in peace. This last condition clearly surprised Varric, who glanced at his fellow emissaries before responding. These terms are acceptable. Though your concern for these aliens is puzzling, they have no standing in matters of Vantaran sovereignty. Maya felt his gaze settle on her again, more calculating now. She met his eyes steadily, careful to reveal nothing. Until tomorrow, Commander, Princess Zora said, effectively dismissing him. The emissaries departed, but not before Varric cast one final appraising look at the assembled group. Maya couldn't shake the feeling that he suspected something about their plans. He knows, she said once the emissaries were gone. Not specifically, but he senses deception. It changes nothing, Lizara insisted. The law is absolute. Once you are formally announced as champion, he must face you or forfeit. But now he'll be preparing for unconventional tactics, Maya countered. Ambassador Krell frowned. Could he refuse the challenge if he knows Maya isn't Vantaran? No, the archivist assured them. The precedent is clear. Non-Vantaran champions are rare but explicitly permitted under the ancient laws. Even General Krovac cannot overturn traditions that predate our recorded history. Princess Zora gestured toward a side passage. Come, there is one final preparation we must complete. They followed her to a small chamber Maya hadn't seen before. Unlike the austere stone architecture of the rest of the sanctuary, this room was lined with living tissue, walls that seemed to pulse gently with bioluminescence, reminding Maya of the advanced bioarchitecture she had glimpsed upon arrival. In the center stood a pedestal supporting what appeared to be a simple wooden spear. Yet as they approached, Maya could see there was nothing simple about it. The wood possessed an inner luminescence, grain patterns shifting subtly as if alive. The sovereign's spear, Zora explained reverently, carved from the first Ori tree, preserved through millennia by techniques lost to modern science. Tradition dictates that the royal champion must touch it before combat to receive the blessing of ancestors. Maya approached cautiously. May I? When Zora nodded, Maya extended her hand slowly toward the weapon. The moment her fingers made contact, a strange sensation washed over her. Not quite sound, not quite light, but a resonance that seemed to vibrate through her very cells. For an instant, she felt connected to something vast and ancient, as though the collective history of Vantara pulsed through her. She withdrew her hand, momentarily disoriented. What was that? The recognition, Zora said, eyes wide with surprise. The spear responds differently to each who touches it, but such a strong reaction. It is said that those who generate the strongest resonance are destined to change the course of our history. Maya flexed her fingers, the sensation already fading. I don't put much stock in destiny, Your Highness. I prefer preparation and strategy. As you should, Lizar agreed pragmatically. Let us return to training. We have precious little time remaining. As they exited the chamber, Maya found herself walking alongside Ambassador Krell. Sir, she ventured quietly, if things go poorly tomorrow. They won't, Krell replied firmly. But if they do, make sure Earth understands what happened here. The Progressive faction is humanity's best hope for continued relations with Vantara. Krell studied her with newfound respect. You know, when I selected you for this mission, some questioned whether a specialist in cultural evolution belonged in active diplomacy. I believe you've answered that question definitively. I'm not sure committing to trial by combat was what they had in mind, Maya said with a wry smile. Diplomacy takes many forms, Chen. Sometimes it's formal dinners and careful language. Sometimes it's understanding alien customs deeply enough to work within them rather than against them. He placed a hand briefly on her shoulder. Whatever happens tomorrow, you've honored our mission and your oath. The remaining daylight hours passed in a blur of final preparations. Maya continued practicing with the ceremonial spear, incorporating everything she had learned about Vantaran combat, while developing variations that played to human strengths. Lower center of gravity, different joint articulation, unexpected rhythms of movement. As night fell, she found herself unable to sleep despite exhaustion. She stood at one of the narrow windows, gazing out at the alien city now controlled by forces hostile to everything she represented. Tomorrow, she would face combat against an opponent bred for war, trained since childhood in martial traditions older than human civilization. A soft sound alerted her to Princess Zora's approach. "You should rest," the princess said gently. "So should you," Maya countered. "Tomorrow changes everything, regardless of outcome." Zora moved to stand beside her at the window. Though they had spent intensive hours together over the past days, this was the first moment of genuine quiet between them. "May I ask you something?" Maya said after a pause. "Something personal." "Of course. Why did you choose this path, supporting connection with other species when so many of your people resisted?" Zora considered the question carefully. "My ancestors ruled in isolation for millennia. We advanced technologically, but our understanding remained limited to our own perspective. When the Goral made first contact, many feared them. Some still believe their extinction 8 centuries ago was divine punishment for reaching beyond our world." She turned to face Maya directly. "But I studied the historical records, the knowledge they shared before their disappearance. I saw how much richer our understanding became through that exchange. When Earth established contact 50 years ago, I recognized the same opportunity, different minds, different approaches to the universe. To reject that connection out of fear seems wasteful." Maya nodded slowly. "On Earth, we have a concept called convergent evolution, different species developing similar traits independently because they work. But the most interesting discoveries come from divergent evolution, unique adaptations we would never have imagined." "Precisely," Zora agreed. "Krovac sees only threat in difference. I see possibility." They fell silent again, watching the 3 moons of Vantara rise above the horizon, casting multiple shadows across the landscape. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Zora said finally, "you have already shown more courage than many who were born to this world. My people will remember. I hope they remember the right lessons," Maya replied quietly. "That sometimes the greatest strength comes not from isolation, but from reaching across differences." As she finally returned to her quarters to attempt sleep, Maya found herself thinking not of the combat techniques she had practiced all day, but of the principles that had brought her here: curiosity, understanding, connection. If those were to be her final contributions to human-Vantaran relations, perhaps they were worthy ones after all. Tomorrow would bring blood and struggle, and quite possibly her end. But tonight, watching alien moons cast their light over an alien world, Maya Chen felt strangely at peace with her choice. She had come to Vantara to build bridges between worlds. If defending those bridges required her to take up a spear rather than a diplomatic brief, then so be it. She would face the challenge of blades not just as a reluctant champion for an embattled princess, but as a representative of humanity's place among the stars.